we have to sell Graceland. And I just looked at him and I said, that will never happen.
For nearly half a century, the mysteries surrounding Elvis Presley have fueled endless speculation, but nothing could prepare the world for this. Using cutting-edge AI technology, investigators finally scanned a secret room long hidden within the king's private estate. What they uncovered wasn't just memorabilia or forgotten relics. It was a shocking discovery that reignited decades of rumors about his life, his struggles, and his untold legacy. So, could this hidden space rewrite everything we thought we knew about Elvis? What exactly did the AI reveal inside? Let's find out. The scan that broke the silence. For nearly half a century, the upstairs of Graceland was treated like hallowed ground, roped off, guarded by silence and preserved as though Elvis himself might walk back in at any moment. Fans could tour the dazzling first floor, admire the jungle room, even linger in the meditation garden where Elvis now rests. But the staircase leading upward remained an unbroken boundary. That was until cutting-edge technology, the kind once reserved for space, exploration, and forensic investigation, was brought to Memphis. Suddenly, the most impenetrable room in music history was no longer untouchable. It began quietly, with a team of specialists arriving under the cover of night. Their tools weren't crowbars or skeleton keys. They were machines designed to peel back layers of mystery without so much as turning a doorknob. Mounted scanners were positioned at the base of the staircase and along exterior walls. Some were barely larger than handheld cameras, yet capable of penetrating surfaces using harmless light and sound waves. For the first time since 1977, eyes, digital ones, were about to cross the threshold that no human had been allowed to breach. The process was meticulous. Laser mapping casts invisible grids across the sealed doorway, measuring every contour with microscopic precision. Each pulse of light created data points that, when combined, formed an architectural skeleton of the forbidden space. Then came the 3D scanners, layering depth and texture into the emerging model. Slowly, walls, doors, and furniture began to take shape on screens in the control room, pixel by pixel, line by line. The second floor of Graceland, once just a legend to outsiders, was starting to reappear in digital form. But it was spectral imaging that pushed the tension into the extraordinary. Unlike simple scans, this technology detected materials, pigments, and even residues invisible to the naked eye. Every wavelength told a story: the fabric of curtains, the varnish on wood, the outlines of objects resting quietly for decades. It wasn't just a reconstruction. It was a revelation of what had been left exactly as Elvis abandoned it. When the first faint outlines of a chair emerged, followed by a bed frame, the room no longer felt like a myth. It felt present, alive, disturbingly intimate. Observers described the atmosphere as electric and unsettling. It was as if the walls themselves resisted being exposed, as though Graceland had grown accustomed to guarding its secret. Every new detail brought both awe and hesitation. Were they trespassing on sacred ground, even without stepping inside? Screens flickered with evolving clarity, stacks of books, an unassuming lamp, shadows of clothing still hanging in closets. The AI was not only showing objects but interpreting the room's arrangement, mapping it with chilling accuracy that blurred the line between discovery and intrusion. Each passing hour drew the digital curtain back further. By the time the full render neared completion, silence filled the control room. There was no need for commentary. The images spoke for themselves. Elvis Presley's upstairs sanctuary, once a place locked away by respect and grief, was now laid bare through beams of light and lines of code. For the first time, the world was not looking up the staircase in wonder. It was standing virtually inside. But as the scan pressed deeper, one question lingered. What hidden truth would surface when shadows finally gave way to light? Keep watching. First images, first shockwaves. When the AI scan finally began stitching its fragments into a coherent whole, the first images flickered onto the monitors like a ghost emerging from the shadows. For years, fans and historians had speculated about the second floor of Graceland. What was still there? What had been removed? Or whether the family had quietly changed the space? Now, for the first time, those theories gave way to cold, digital certainty. The upstairs was no myth. It was intact. The layout unfolded first, a skeletal grid of corridors and chambers rendered in sharp relief. At the heart of it sat Elvis Presley's bedroom, larger than most had imagined, but oddly restrained compared to the theatrical decor downstairs. The scan revealed the custom-built bed, broad enough to dominate the room, with side tables flanking it on either end. On one of them rested a lamp, its fabric shade perfectly preserved. On the other hand, an object that froze the technicians in silence. A stack of dog-eared books, still leaning against each other as though waiting for their owner to return. Then came the bathroom. A stark outline formed on the screen. Fixtures, tiles, and the infamous space where Elvis's life came to a tragic end. Every angle carried an almost unbearable intimacy. The AI captured details too delicate for human eyes, peering through a locked door. A towel draped neatly over a rail, a small shelf lined with bottles, even the faint texture of a rug on the tiled floor. It was both ordinary and extraordinary, an everyday room transformed into a cultural tomb by the weight of history. As the model filled with layers of depth, the eerie preservation of personal objects took on sharper focus. Clothing still hung in the closet, some items suspended on their original wooden hangers, untouched since the summer of 1977. Shirts in muted tones, jackets with flared collars, and trousers folded with precision. They weren't costumes for the stage, but garments of the man behind the myth. Nearby, a chair sat angled toward a low table, a humble reading space where the scan revealed papers scattered in irregular piles. On closer processing, faint impressions of handwriting emerged, unfinished notes and marginal scribbles that no biographer had ever seen. The living presence of music was everywhere. Vinyl records were stacked near the bedside, their spines aligned like silent sentinels of another era. The AI identified labels, some worn from repeated use, including gospel albums Elvis was known to love in his private hours. A turntable stood nearby, its tone arm frozen mid-rest, as though it had been paused mid-play nearly 5 decades earlier. For fans who long believed the King's last music died with him, the sight of his personal listening corner felt like opening a time capsule. When the first batch of reconstructed visuals leaked into curated previews, the effect was immediate and seismic. Fan communities across the globe lit up with disbelief and reverence. Forums flooded with posts describing goosebumps, tears, and even guilt at seeing a space Elvis had so fiercely guarded. Some described it as the closest thing to standing beside him in his final moments, while others called it a violation wrapped in wonder. The shockwave wasn't just about the objects revealed, it was about the sensation of stepping into a silence the world had promised never to disturb. The upstairs rooms of Graceland had always been a rumor, a locked shrine spoken about in hushed tones. Now, for the first time, the AI scans gave that rumor a body, a face, and a haunting presence. And as more details continued to stream in, the sense of unease only deepened. But if the rooms themselves carried such weight, what secrets might emerge from the items Elvis left behind? Stay tuned to find out. The hidden items nobody expected. As the scan moved beyond walls and furniture, it began to capture the kinds of objects no one expected to see. These weren't glittering jumpsuits preserved for tourists or gold records polished for display. These were deeply personal items, left untouched since 1977. Artifacts of the man, rather than the myth. The first revelations came from a modest reading table near the chair angled toward a lamp. Stacked there were worn books, their spines faded from use. At first glance, they looked ordinary, but the AI's imaging revealed something extraordinary. Annotations etched into the margins in Elvis's own handwriting. Words were underlined, entire sentences circled, and beside a passage about the loneliness of fame, one faint note seemed to read, "This is me, always watched, always trapped." For decades, stories of Elvis's inner restlessness had relied on second-hand accounts. Now his own words, scrawled in hurried ink, brought that struggle uncomfortably close. Then came the discovery of scattered sheets resting on a nightstand, half hidden beneath the lamp's base. At first, they resembled scraps of paper, but when reconstructed digitally, they revealed themselves as musical drafts, lyrics, and notations written in hurried bursts, sometimes struck through, repeated. One fragment appeared to contain the word heavenly, while another scribbled phrase mentioned midnight rain. These weren't polished studio materials. They were fragments of creativity, still raw, caught mid-thought. For fans who believed Elvis had retreated from his art in his final years, the evidence suggested otherwise. Even in seclusion, he was sketching ideas, pushing melodies across paper, still chasing the music that had defined him. But the most curious revelation didn't rest on shelves or nightstands. It was uncovered in the shadows beneath the bed. The AI scanners detected a dense, rectangular object, partly metallic, reinforced at its corners, sealed tight with a latch. What appeared on the model was not a simple box, but something heavier, sturdier, deliberately placed. Dust analysis indicated it hadn't been moved in decades. Its location was striking, hidden but close, as though Elvis wanted it within reach, yet out of sight. Speculation erupted. Could it be filled with letters? Private confessions never meant for the world? Might it hold unreleased recordings or personal tapes, evidence of music the public never heard? Some wondered if it contained financial papers or medical documents, material that might alter how history remembered his final years. The simple fact of its secrecy raised deeper questions. Why did Elvis keep it so near to where he slept? Was it a safeguard of memories, or a vault for burdens too heavy to share? Forensic analysts noted the box bore no signs of tampering, no hint it had ever been opened since his passing. It remained silent, its contents hidden, its mystery intact, and yet, its very presence added weight to the room. The annotated books revealed a man wrestling with solitude. The unfinished song drafts suggested he still reached for art, and the sealed chest, untouched beneath the bed, stood as the most enigmatic piece of all, an object that seemed to hold not just belongings, but answers. The AI had done its work, exposing items frozen in time, but the meaning behind them, the thoughts scrawled in margins, the melodies never sung, the secrets locked in that chest, remained questions the scan could not solve. But why was this space left untouched for decades, and what unseen force kept it sealed from the world? Stay with us. Why the room stayed locked. For all the dazzling chandeliers and peacock-stained windows of Graceland, there has always been one immovable boundary, the staircase roped off with quiet finality. Since August 1977, when Elvis Presley's life ended upstairs, that floor has remained sealed, not renovated, not staged for tourists, not altered to fit the museum-like quality of the rest of the house. The decision wasn't driven by profit or preservation alone. It was about dignity, privacy, and protecting the one place Elvis had reserved for himself. In the days after his death, Vernon Presley, devastated and surrounded by demands from the press, made a choice that would define Graceland for generations. While the world clamored for photographs, interviews, and access to the king's final setting, Vernon shut the upstairs down. He ordered that nothing be removed, nothing staged, nothing touched. It was Elvis's private space, and it would remain that way, forever. Over the decades, that decision grew into an unbreakable rule. No one, not even the most powerful, was allowed past the rope. Tourists could admire the mirrored ceilings and shag carpets of the Jungle Room, walk across the piano room where Elvis once sang gospel, and wander the halls lined with gold records. But the second floor remained untouchable. Even heads of state were turned away. When former U.S. President Bill Clinton visited Graceland, he was told, politely but firmly, that the upper level was off-limits. The same rule applied to countless celebrities, dignitaries, and lifelong friends of the Presley family. The refusal was consistent and absolute. Elvis's sanctuary would not be turned into a spectacle, not for money, not for fame, not for power. And yet, that unwavering silence is exactly what intensified the mystery. The more people were denied access, the more the public wanted answers. Fans speculated endlessly in forums and biographies about what the upstairs looked like. Some believed it was perfectly preserved. Others insisted the family must have altered it to conceal the true circumstances of Elvis's final moments. That locked staircase became the most tantalizing symbol of all, the door that even presidents could not open. Which is why the arrival of AI scanning technology triggered such a heated debate. For nearly 5 decades, the family's authority had held firm. If you weren't invited by Elvis himself, you weren't going upstairs. Now, with laser mapping, 3D reconstruction, and spectral imaging, the upstairs had been exposed without anyone ever crossing the threshold. The scans seemed to break the family's sacred boundary, not physically, but digitally. To some, it was a marvel of modern technology, allowing the world to glimpse what had been hidden for so long. To others, it was a violation, a kind of trespass that no velvet rope could stop. It left the Presley legacy balanced on a knife's edge. The rooms remained locked, yet their secrets had been laid bare by beams of light and lines of code, revealing more than any dignitary or president had ever been allowed to see. But what was it really like behind those locked doors? And why did the upstairs hold such power over those who lived there? Don't blink, because what comes next will stun you. Lisa Marie's secret sanctuary. For outsiders, the second floor of Graceland was a forbidden mystery, but for Lisa Marie Presley, it was home. Long before velvet ropes and no entry signs turned it into legend, the hallway above those stairs had been the setting of her childhood. Her bedroom sat only a few steps from her father's, across from the bathroom where everything changed on that August morning in 1977. To the millions of fans who lined up outside the mansion each year, it was a shrine. To Lisa, it was a living memory, carved into her earliest years. She was only 9 when Elvis died, but memories from those final days never faded. Friends close to her often said she carried them like unspoken scars, moments she never detailed publicly, but hinted at in fragmented interviews. She remembered the quiet hush that descended that day, the sudden shift in voices, the way grown-ups avoided her eyes. For Lisa, the upstairs wasn't just where she lived, it was where she lost her father. That truth alone may explain why she fought so hard to keep the second floor sealed. In later years, as Graceland became one of the most visited homes in America, Lisa Marie maintained an almost defiant stance about its private quarters. Fans wanted access, journalists asked relentlessly, and historians argued for its preservation as a public archive. She never relented. "That was my dad's sanctuary," she once said, her tone sharp with finality. "It stays the way it was." Those words were simple, but they revealed something deeper, that to her, unlocking the upstairs wasn't about satisfying curiosity. It was about protecting dignity, a boundary she refused to let the world breach. Speculation has always swirled around what exactly Lisa knew about the rooms beyond the locked door. Some say she occasionally returned to them in private, finding comfort in the familiarity of her childhood surroundings. Others insist she avoided them entirely, unable to face the stillness frozen since 1977. Neither account has ever been confirmed, and perhaps both are true. What is certain is that she guarded the upstairs with the same intensity her father once guarded his own privacy. The AI scans, therefore, struck an especially sensitive chord. The images of annotated books, half-written song drafts, and the shadow of a sealed chest carried echoes of Lisa's childhood footsteps. To the public, they were discoveries. To her, they might have been reminders, tangible fragments of the life she shared with her father in those quiet halls. Imagine being 9 years old, peeking into his room late at night to find him reading, music drifting faintly from the turntable, and notes scrawled on paper at his side. Decades later, those same objects reappear on a glowing monitor, exposed not by memory, but by a machine. It's no wonder Lisa Marie resisted making the upstairs part of the tour. To her, it wasn't history, it was personal. The closet full of shirts wasn't a costume archive. They were the clothes she brushed against when she ran to hug him. Even the sealed chest beneath the bed could have been something she remembered seeing, perhaps never asking about, perhaps knowing instinctively not to. Her silence about those details wasn't indifference, it was protection. Whether she revisited the rooms in adulthood or avoided them completely, she never betrayed the sanctity of that space. She knew the upstairs wasn't just another exhibit to catalog. It was a fragment of her own story, intertwined with the king's, and the AI findings, uncanny in their accuracy, seem almost to echo her choices. The room preserved as if time had stopped, a sanctuary where father and daughter once shared their last ordinary moments. It may explain why even now the family has not officially responded to the scans. Lisa Marie's long-standing refusal to open the space may still guide those decisions. For her, the upstairs was never about myth or mystery. It was about memory, and memory, unlike technology, resists being scanned. But who really glimpsed what lay beyond those doors? And why did they remain silent? Keep watching. The outsiders who saw too much. A handful of people stepped into Elvis's forbidden space, and their refusal to speak about it makes more sense now than ever. While the public has been locked out for nearly 5 decades, rare exceptions prove that some eyes did glimpse what lay beyond the staircase. Their stories were vague, fragmented, and often doubted. But the recent AI scans now cast their silence in a new light. The most famous of these was Nicolas Cage. A lifelong Elvis devotee, Cage briefly married Lisa Marie Presley in the early 2000s. During their time together, he was allowed into the upstairs quarters, an honor rarely extended to anyone outside the family. But when pressed about what he witnessed, Cage never gave details. He avoided describing furniture, objects, or the atmosphere in any concrete way. Instead, his remarks were cloaked in broad, unsettling terms: haunting, emotional, indescribable. For years, fans speculated about what that meant. Why stay so vague if it was only a bedroom? With the AI scans now showing annotated books, unfinished drafts, and a sealed chest under the bed, his silence feels intentional, as if even speaking about the space risked betraying something sacred. Then came an entirely different account, less famous, but just as curious. In 2022, an influencer named Chewy Thompson claimed he was quietly escorted upstairs during a routine tour. He offered no photos, no specifics, only the impression that he had entered a place where time had refused to move forward. His description was simple but striking, like walking into a moment that never ended. Many dismissed the claim outright, accusing him of inventing the story for attention. But when the AI scans revealed frozen closets, scattered notes, and personal items preserved in eerie stillness, his words began to sound less like invention and more like caution. What unites these rare witnesses, whether Hollywood star or internet personality, is not what they revealed, but what they withheld. They saw with their eyes what technology has only now confirmed, yet both chose restraint. Their silence mirrors the Presley family's own refusal to open the upstairs. And perhaps that silence wasn't avoidance at all. It was recognition that some spaces carry a weight too heavy for words. The hidden architecture of escape. Not every secret inside Graceland was about objects. Some were built into the very bones of the house itself. When the AI scans peeled back more than furniture and belongings, they exposed architectural details few had ever spoken of. Hidden behind ordinary walls and tucked above familiar rooms, these features suggested Elvis wasn't just seeking comfort upstairs. He was building escape routes. The most striking was a narrow stairwell, barely visible from the main tour areas. The AI mapped it, descending directly from the upstairs landing into the kitchen below, a discreet passage designed for quiet movement. Elvis could slip downstairs unseen, bypassing guests or staff, and move through his own mansion without notice. For a man hounded by cameras and fans, the secret staircase wasn't just a convenience, it was protection. The scans also revealed how the upstairs hallway had been structurally altered. Originally open, with railings overlooking the grand staircase, Elvis had the space enclosed during his later years. Walls and doors were added, sealing off the second floor entirely from the rest of the house. What had once been a home's natural flow was reshaped into a fortress of privacy. Visitors downstairs could laugh, tour or celebrate, but upstairs, Elvis could vanish into silence, separated by a physical barrier only he controlled. Even the AI's rendering of door placements and interior walls hinted at a deliberate design for seclusion. Angled entrances created blind spots, preventing a clear view into rooms from the hall. The revelation has sparked speculation. Were these designs simply the whims of a private star or something more? Some wonder if Elvis, overwhelmed by fame, crafted his upstairs sanctuary as a retreat so complete it bordered on an escape plan. The hidden stairwell and enclosed hallway weren't just luxuries. They were exits, perhaps not from Graceland, but from the relentless world that demanded Elvis Presley always remain on stage. So what secrets did these deliberate choices truly hide? And could anyone ever understand them? Stay tuned to uncover what the AI couldn't explain. What I couldn't explain. The AI scans delivered images with startling clarity, but what they offered in detail, they lacked in meaning. Screens could trace the curve of a chair, map the surface of a chest, even recreate the faded ink of scribbled notes, but they could not explain the intentions behind them. Technology could show us what was there. It could not tell us why. The annotated books, for instance, brimmed with underlines and cryptic marginalia. Phrases like trapped and watching hinted at inner turmoil, yet the algorithms couldn't distinguish between casual thoughts and heartfelt confessions. Were these notes part of a restless mind searching for peace, or simply passing reflections jotted in the margins of a sleepless night? The AI offered no answer. The musical drafts carried a similar weight, titles half-formed, lyrics crossed out, lines rewritten. Every sheet suggested an artist still creating, even as his health faltered. But the scan couldn't capture the melodies that might have accompanied those words. Was Elvis working on a masterpiece, cut short by fate, or were they fragments of ideas he never intended to finish? The question lingered louder than the images themselves. And then, of course, there was the chest beneath the bed. The technology rendered its shape, density, even metallic hinges, but what lay inside remained sealed to speculation. Letters, recordings, keepsakes, any could be true. The AI could map its shell, but not its soul. That is the paradox of these revelations. They satisfy curiosity while deepening the mystery. For every object identified, another layer of uncertainty takes its place. Fans stare at the reconstructed rooms and feel closer to Elvis than ever. Yet the silence inside them is deafening. What the scans exposed was not resolution but echoes, hints of a story unfinished. Elvis's sanctuary, even when illuminated by the most advanced technology of our age, remains a puzzle that resists completion. So what do you think Elvis truly left behind in that hidden room? Unfinished music, personal confessions, or something the world isn't ready for? We'd like to hear your thoughts. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.